6 months ago, I was a mess. I'm talking about the kind of mess where you can't even look at yourself in the mirror without feeling disgust. I was scrolling through life, watching everyone else live, while I existed in this fog of mediocrity and self-hatred. Then I stumbled across Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life, and I thought, what if I actually tried this? What if I followed these rules religiously for 90 days and documented everything? What happened next completely transformed my reality. But before I tell you about the incredible highs, let me tell you about the devastating lows that almost made me quit. Let me paint you a picture of where I was. My room looked like a tornado had hit it. Clothes everywhere, dishes stacked up. That smell that you can't quite identify, but you know it's not good. I was 30 pounds overweight, hadn't been to the gym in 8 months, and my relationships were falling apart. 0. I was addicted to instant gratification, scrolling social media for hours, binge watching Netflix until 3 a.m., ordering takeout because cooking felt impossible. I was living in what Peterson calls chaos, and chaos was slowly killing me. My career was stagnant. I'd been in the same dead-end job for 3 years, complaining about my boss, but never taking action. I was bitter, resentful, and pointing fingers at everyone except the person in the mirror. But here's the thing about rock bottom. It gives you a solid foundation to build from. And Peterson's first rule hit me like a freight train. Rule 1, stand up straight with your shoulders back. This seems simple, right? Just fix your posture. But Peterson isn't talking about posture, he's talking about presence. He's talking about taking up space in the world instead of shrinking into the shadows. Day 1. I noticed I was constantly looking down at my phone, hunched over, like I was apologizing for existing. My shoulders were rolled forward, my head was down, and I was literally making myself smaller. So I started standing up straight, not just physically, but mentally. I started making eye contact with people. I started speaking up in meetings. I started walking into rooms like I had a right to be there. The change was immediate. People started treating me differently. My boss started giving me more responsibility. Strangers started smiling at me. But more importantly, I started feeling different about myself. Here's what Peterson understands that most people don't. Your body language doesn't just communicate to others. It communicates to you. When you stand up straight, you're telling your brain, I'm someone worth respecting. And your brain starts to believe it. But this was just the beginning. Rule 2 is where things got really interesting. Rule 2, treat yourself like someone you are responsible for helping. This rule destroyed me in the best possible way. Peterson points out that people will move heaven and earth to help their sick dog, but they won't even take basic care of themselves. They'll research the perfect diet for their pet, but eat garbage. They'll make sure their dog gets exercise, but won't go for a walk themselves. I realized I was treating myself like my own worst enemy. I was feeding myself junk food, staying up late, avoiding exercise, and then wondering why I felt terrible. I was more concerned about my Netflix subscription than my mental health. So I started treating myself like someone I actually cared about. I started asking, what would be good for me right now? Not what would feel good in the moment, but what would actually be beneficial. I started meal prepping on Sundays. I set a bedtime alarm. I scheduled workouts like important meetings. I started saying no to things that drained me and yes to things that built me up. The internal resistance was incredible. My brain was screaming, "This is too hard. Just order pizza. Just skip the gym. Just stay up late." But I kept asking, what would I tell a friend to do in this situation? And slowly, I started becoming my own best friend instead of my own worst enemy. Rule 3. Make friends with people who want the best for you. This rule was a wake-up call about the people I was surrounding myself with. Peterson says you can't save people who don't want to be saved, and you shouldn't let them drag you down with them. I looked around at my social circle and realized I was surrounded by people who were committed to staying miserable. They complained constantly, but never took action. They made excuses for everything. They were addicted to drama and chaos. Worst of all, they were sabotaging my efforts to improve. When I started eating healthier, they'd say, "Come on, one burger won't hurt." When I started going to bed earlier, they'd pressure me to stay out late. When I started working on myself, they'd make jokes about me thinking I'm better than everyone. I had to make some painful decisions. I started distancing myself from people who were energy vampires. I started seeking out people who were also trying to improve their lives. I joined a gym, started attending meetups, and began having deeper conversations with people who inspired me. The loneliness was brutal at first, but Peterson warns about this. When you start improving yourself, you'll initially feel isolated because you're no longer compatible with your old life. But eventually, you'll attract people who are on the same journey. And he was right. I started meeting people who challenged me, supported me, and celebrated my growth. My new friendships were based on mutual respect and shared values, not just convenience and habit. Rule 4. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday. This rule saved my mental health. I was constantly comparing myself to everyone else and feeling inadequate. Social media made it worse. Everyone else seemed to have their life figured out, while I was struggling with basic tasks. Peterson says the only comparison that matters is between who you are today and who you were yesterday. Are you slightly better? Are you making progress? That's all that counts. This shift in perspective was liberating. Instead of feeling defeated by how far I had to go, I started feeling proud of how far I'd come. Instead of being paralyzed by comparing myself to others, I started being motivated by my own growth. I started tracking everything, my workouts, my reading, my habits, not to judge myself, but to see the progress that's often invisible day to day. When you're living your life, you don't notice the gradual changes. But when you track them, you can see the incredible transformation happening. Rule 5. Do not let your children do anything that makes you dislike them. I don't have kids, but this rule applies to every relationship in your life. Peterson is talking about boundaries, not letting people treat you poorly even if you love them. I realized I had no boundaries. I was a people pleaser who said yes to everything and everyone. I was letting friends take advantage of me, family members disrespect me, and coworkers walk all over me. The pushback was immediate and intense. People who were used to taking advantage of me were not happy about the new boundaries. Some relationships ended. Some family members got angry. Some friends called me selfish. But here's what I learned. People who get angry when you set boundaries are exactly the people who were benefiting from you not having any. The people who truly care about you will respect your boundaries and treat you better. My relationships improved dramatically. The people who stayed in my life started treating me with more respect. New people I met saw that I valued myself and treated me accordingly. I stopped being a doormat and started being a person worth respecting. Rule 6. Set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. This rule hit me like a slap in the face. I was constantly complaining about politics, society, my job, my family, everything except the one thing I had complete control over, myself.
Peterson says you can't fix the world if you can't even fix your own life. How can you have opinions about how society should be run if you can't even run your own life effectively? I started with the literal interpretation. I cleaned my room, but then I went deeper. I organized my finances. I addressed my health problems. I fixed my relationships. I developed my skills. I took responsibility for every area of my life that was within my control. This was humbling and empowering at the same time. Humbling because I realized how much of my life was a mess. Empowering because I realized how much control I actually had. Instead of spending energy complaining about things I couldn't control, I started putting that energy into things I could control. Instead of being a victim of circumstances, I started being the author of my own story. The transformation was incredible as I got my own life in order. I started feeling more confident about expressing opinions. But paradoxically, I became less angry and judgmental about everything else. When you're busy building your own life, you have less time to tear down others. Rule 7. Pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. This rule forced me to confront some uncomfortable truths about my life. I was constantly choosing the easy path, the path of least resistance, the path that required the least effort. I was staying in a job I hated because it was comfortable. I was avoiding difficult conversations because they were uncomfortable. I was choosing immediate pleasure over long-term satisfaction. Peterson says meaning is found in responsibility, not in happiness. Happiness is fleeting, but meaning sustains you through difficult times. And meaning comes from taking on challenges that matter, not from avoiding challenges altogether. I started making harder choices. I left my comfortable but unfulfilling job to start my own business. I had difficult conversations with family members. I started pursuing goals that scared me instead of goals that were guaranteed. The short-term pain was intense. Starting a business was terrifying. Having difficult conversations was uncomfortable. Pursuing challenging goals meant failing sometimes. But the long-term fulfillment was incredible. I started feeling like my life had purpose. I started feeling proud of myself. I started feeling like I was living up to my potential instead of wasting it. Rule 8. Tell the truth. Or at least don't lie. This rule revolutionized my relationships and my relationship with myself. I realized I was lying constantly. Little lies,
Big lies, lies of omission, lies to make people feel better, lies to avoid conflict. But the biggest lies were the ones I was telling myself. I was lying about what I wanted, what I believed, what I was capable of. I was living a life that wasn't authentic to who I really was.
I started telling the truth, even when it was difficult. I told people how I really felt. I admitted when I didn't know something. I stopped pretending to be someone I wasn't to impress others. The results were mixed at first. Some people didn't like the truth. Some relationships became more difficult. Some conversations became more intense. But something magical happened. I started attracting people who appreciated honesty. My relationships became deeper and more genuine. I started feeling more confident because I wasn't constantly trying to keep track of lies. Most importantly, I started being honest with myself. I admitted what I really wanted out of life. I acknowledged my strengths and weaknesses. I stopped living in fantasy and started living in reality. Rule 9, assume the person you're listening to knows something you don't. This rule transformed how I interacted with everyone. I was constantly trying to prove how smart I was, how much I knew, how right I was about everything. Peterson says everyone has something to teach you, even if it's just what not to do. Every person has lived experiences that you haven't had, and those experiences contain wisdom. I started approaching conversations with curiosity instead of judgment. Instead of waiting for my turn to talk, I started actually listening. Instead of trying to win arguments, I started trying to understand perspectives. The change in my relationships was dramatic. People started opening up to me more. I started learning incredible things from people I had previously dismissed. I started having deeper, more meaningful conversations. I learned business strategies from my Uber driver. I learned life lessons from my grandmother. I learned problem-solving techniques from my coworkers. Everyone became a potential teacher instead of a potential opponent. Rule 10. Be precise in your speech. This rule made me realize how sloppy my thinking had become. I was using vague language, making generalizations, and avoiding specificity because it felt safer. Peterson says precision in speech leads to precision in thought. When you're forced to articulate exactly what you mean, you're forced to think clearly about what you actually believe. I started being more specific in my communication. Instead of saying, I'm stressed, I would say, I'm anxious about the presentation tomorrow because I haven't prepared enough. Instead of saying, my job sucks, I would say, I'm frustrated with my job because I'm not being challenged and I don't see opportunities for growth. This precision helped me solve problems more effectively. When you're specific about what's wrong, you can be specific about how to fix it. When you're vague, you stay stuck in vague dissatisfaction. Rule 11. Do not bother children when they are skateboarding. This rule is about letting people take calculated risks and learn from their mistakes. I was constantly trying to protect everyone from failure, including myself. I realized I was living in a safety bubble that was actually making me weaker. I was avoiding challenges, avoiding risks, avoiding anything that might result in failure or pain. Peterson says competence comes from taking on challenges and overcoming them. If you're always safe, you're always weak. If you never fail, you never learn. I started taking more calculated risks. I started new projects even though they might fail. I started having difficult conversations even though they might go badly. I started pushing myself outside my comfort zone regularly. The failures were painful, but they were also educational. Mwahahaha! Each failure taught me something valuable and made me more resilient. I started seeing failure as feedback instead of as judgment. Mwahahaha! Rule 12. Pet a cat when you encounter one on the street. This rule is about finding beauty and meaning in small moments, especially during difficult times. Life is full of suffering, but it's also full of small joys if you pay attention. I started noticing the good things that happened every day. A beautiful sunset, a kind gesture from a stranger, a moment of laughter with a friend. These small moments started adding up to something significant. I started practicing gratitude daily. I started being more present instead of always thinking about the future or dwelling on the past. I started appreciating what I had instead of constantly focusing on what I lacked. So what happened after 90 days of following these rules religiously? I lost 25 pounds. I got a promotion. I started my own side business. I improved my relationships. I developed new skills. I became more confident, more resilient, more focused. But the external changes weren't the most important part. The internal transformation was what mattered most. I stopped being a victim and started being a hero of my own story. I stopped making excuses and started taking responsibility. I stopped living in chaos and started creating order. I stopped being someone I didn't respect and started becoming someone I was proud to be. The rules didn't make my life easier. They made my life better. They didn't eliminate problems. They gave me the tools to solve problems. They didn't make me happy all the time. They made my life meaningful. But let me be completely honest with you. Following these rules is incredibly difficult. There were days when I wanted to quit. There were moments when I felt like I was being too hard on myself. There were times when I failed miserably. The resistance from other people was intense. When you start improving yourself, some people will try to pull you back down. They'll make fun of you, sabotage you, or guilt you into returning to your old ways. The internal resistance was even harder. Your brain is wired to keep you safe and comfortable, not to help you grow. Every time you try to change, your brain will fight you. It will give you excuses, justifications, and reasons why you should quit. But here's what I learned. The resistance is a sign that you're on the right path. If it was easy, everyone would do it. You can stop being a victim of your circumstances and start being the author of your story. The path is difficult, but the destination is worth it. You can become the person you've always wanted to be. You can create the life you've always dreamed of. You can find meaning, purpose, and fulfillment. But it requires a decision. It requires commitment. It requires taking responsibility for your life and your choices. I challenge you to try this experiment yourself. Choose one of Peterson's rules and follow it for 30 days. Document your experience. Share your results. Don't wait for motivation. Motivation comes after action, not before. Don't wait for inspiration. Inspiration comes from doing the work. Don't wait for permission. Give yourself permission to become who you're meant to be. The only person who can change your life is you. The only time you can start is now. The only choice that matters is the next one you make. What's it going to be? If this video helped you, smash that like button and subscribe for more content about self-improvement and personal development. Drop a comment below and let me know which rule resonated with you most. And if you're ready to take action, hit that notification bell so you never miss new content that could change your life. Remember, you're not stuck with the life you have. You can create the life you want, but you have to be willing to do the work. Are you ready?